do you breathe? Who taught you how to breathe? In fact, how are you breathing right now? You take a moment and you think about how you're breathing. You probably have not thought about how you're breathing because as humans, we are incredibly powerful, that the life force of us as humans is our breath. And we don't even have to think about breathing and remaining alive. It is the most powerful tool in our bodies that you probably haven't even thought of. And today I would like to ask you, what if you did actually think about your breathing? So today I have an expert on the breath who is going to help us dive in and learn more about your breath, learn more about what techniques you can use to take ownership of your life and how powerful your breathing can be. Today I am bringing on Chris August, who is the author of Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life, and a keynote speaker and co-founder of Beats and Breath, which I've mentioned on some previous episodes, you guys. I love this app. It is very helpful for you to have breathwork session and meditation combination. And he's going to dive in a little bit more about what his experience is over the last 15 years with holistic wellness, somatic healing, energy medicine, leadership development, NDE. We've got a whole lot of exciting things to dig into today. So welcome, Chris. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here and great to share the power of breath with everybody that is listening. So thank you so much for bringing me on.
Absolutely. So I would just like to jump in and you just start out and tell us, like, why is our breath so important?
Yeah, it's a great question. Why is our breath important? Well, for, the clear case here, it's a function that keeps us alive. Without breath, there's no life. So breath equals life. But it's so much more than that. And that's one of my intentions for writing this book, for sharing this work, for being in this field for 10 plus years is a way in which I can transmit a message that your breath is the very instrument, the very catalyst for your expansion, for your healing, for your growth. And it is one of the most powerful forces. Yet, as you alluded to in the opening, not many people are tapped into that. It's an automatic function. It happens without us even thinking about it, and thankfully it does. But when we begin to tap into the intentionality and consciousness of breathing, we begin to uncover an entire world that we didn't even know was there, a hidden world that really supports us in the expansion, the enhancement, the elevation of our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well being. And it really touches on every aspect of our life. And so I'm very passionate about this work and it's changed my life. And, I've helped, support thousands of others on their path of healing and transformation using the power of their own breath. So yeah, there's so much to get into today, and I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, that is wonderful. That is a great start. And I have mentioned breath work in a few previous episodes, and my just kind of generic description was it's a patterned rhythmic breathing combined with meditation. So would you expand for somebody who maybe has not ever tried breath work and kind of explain like what it is and how and why it works?
Yeah, what I usually tell people and how I explain is breath work is simply an active form of meditation. It's a way of bringing conscious awareness to your breath to transform, to transmute, to elevate yourself from the inside out and your entire well-being. And so when we think of meditation, we think of sitting there, doing our best to quiet our thoughts and maybe listening to some ambient music. Now, there's different forms of meditation. There's TM. There's so many different forms that we can focus on. A lot of times in ancient forms of meditations, you would focus on a mantra, and this mantra you would repeat this mantra, and this mantra is sacred as there's this power behind these words. Now, essentially, we're using breath as our mantra. So your breath is a way to keep you in rhythm, in tune with whatever it is you're meditating on, right? And it just allows you to stay in sync. Now you add music to that, you add a whole rhythmic, soundscape, then it completely becomes this engaging practice. Really, that is designed to clear, dissolve, release any blockages, barriers that is in the way of your core expression. Now, most people are operating in survival mode. They're in a sympathetic fight or flight state. They can't think clear. Their mind is running a mile a minute, and they're just in this place of deep tension and constriction. And so, what the breath is essentially doing, depending upon the breath pattern and the type of technique we're using, it's bringing us back into presence, back into coherence, back into harmony with our own natural rhythm. But again, we live in a very stressed, anxious, overwhelmed world. And so that's why having a tool like breathwork, it's so incredibly important to bring us back into balance. And there's so much more I can share there as well, as far as the different breath patterns and how that correlates with our different states and all of that. But I'm going to just leave it there based on the
Yeah.
question you asked.
Yeah, I think for me, it's one of those things that and in creating this podcast, Back to the Heart, the premise is when you can get back to yourself, right? Get back to that inner knowing, to that intuition that we all have, we're able to live our lives to its greatest potential, to its fullest, right? And what happens, at least for me, is that there's so many things going on around us, all of the outside stimuli, and especially today in the digital world, that it is so difficult for me to quiet my mind and really put myself in a space to listen. Whether you're a believer in, source, God, whatever it is, we're all in the same boat of listening and feeling for direction. And I feel like oftentimes people say, well, I don't meditate or I don't want to meditate because they can't stop their thoughts. They've got this monkey brain bouncing around. So I have found that with the breath work, it gives you something to intentionally focus on, that breathing, so that you are able to stop, or at least slow down, all the other shit that's going on in your head, to be able to focus on that breathing, to have that power and that control of what is inside of you, which is where those messages are able to free flow and come out of you.
That's it. Very well said. You're essentially speaking in Kabbalah terms. You're speaking the 99% world, which is the quantum field where our soul resides, our higher self, and then the 1% field, which is purely material and physical, where the ego resides and the monkey brain and all of that. It's we're so caught up in that, and the perception of this massive world that is existing around us at all times is almost feels impossible to tap into, because we're so much in tunnel vision and so much in survival mode. And when you can just tap out for just even a few moments and tap into the calling, the whispers of your own intuition and your own soul, you begin to gain access to so much creativity, so much inspiration, so much clarity. And that's really what we're doing when we're working with the breath. We're tapping out of this very narrow banded world into this expanded world that's just all around us and available at all times.
Yeah, for sure. And like, how did you discover that this was something that was worth looking into and that could make an impact in your life and in other people?
Yeah, there was many catalysts along the way. I can name several, but just really tuning into what wants to be shared here. So basically, back in 2012, I had left the corporate world. I was in a exact place that I'm speaking to right now, survival mode, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, climbing the corporate ladder, just finished my master's degree, just tired and burnt out and not really fully fulfilled in my life. And I decided then that I needed to make a change. And I just prayed and I asked, like, show me the signs. I need a sign. I just can't do this anymore. This is not my path. And over the course of many weeks, months, I received many indications and one particular sign that I followed, and that was a sign to begin to apply for the Peace Corps. I saw a little billboard on the side of the road driving down the highway from my job, and it says, "Are you ready to answer the call?" And it said, "Sponsored by the Peace Corps." And so I had Googled, "What's the Peace Corps?" And I found out that it was a American grassroots organization that you go and volunteer for 2 years of your life in a foreign country, and you never know where you're going to go. They send you, wherever you're assigned. And so I ended up applying, and a little over a year later, I got accepted, and I then left to go to Tanzania, Africa. So I left everything behind. I was living in Buffalo, New York at the time, and I left on a 737 to Tanzania, Africa, and never looked back. And so I
Oh,
lived 2 years of my life there as a volunteer, working as a health and business volunteer in the village that I was assigned to. And it was a very rural village in Tanzania, very beautiful, incredible people. Very, of course, challenging experience as I was basically living in nature. I had no access to modern amenities, no access to running water, electricity. So it was a very primal way of living. But what happened there is that returned me back to my natural rhythm because I was living in rhythm with the elements, with nature. I was rising with the sun, going to bed with the sun. It was just on the equator. So, 6 a.m. sun rises, 6 p.m. sun falls. And so this was how I lived my life. And through that experience, I began to dive so deep into my inner world. And, I didn't have the distractions of the Western way. And I didn't have the technology to be able to distract myself in any way. So I went deep within myself. I found meditation. I found Kundalini yoga. And through that process, I began to discover the power of my breath. And one moment in particular, which was an additional catalyst to already, living halfway across the world, I found myself in a very scary situation in the Zambezi River where I was whitewater rafting. And halfway through the whitewater rafting trip, I fell into a class 5 rapid. I got ejected from the boat. And this experience was, as you can imagine, extremely tumultuous in so many ways, where the waves just crashing over me. And for anybody that doesn't know about whitewater rafting, class 5 is like, one of the highest ranked rapids in the sense of its intensity. And so I was being, just brutally just battered by this water, just like crashing over me. And I was really coming up for air, then sinking down under, swallowing water, and I was fighting it because that's really what my body was telling me to do. But of course, that goes against what they tell you is just to relax. But the more I fought, the more I got exhausted, and I finally began to essentially drown, and I was losing consciousness. And I remember perceiving, like many NDE experiences I've read previous to this, of this white light approaching me. And so I began to depart from my body in that moment. Whether it was that moment or just after, I was yanked out of the water and saved by a kayaker and put onto the boat, and he was pumping my chest, and all of a sudden I started to come back to life. And regurgitate and spit out all this water that was stuck in my lungs. And I just remember looking up at the blue sky, the canyons that I was in, and just started crying and feeling into the experience of being alive. And the only thing that connects my experience to being alive is my very breath. And I knew from that moment that it was my job to not only share this, but to share the power of breath with the world. And I didn't know what that looked like, but throughout many years, having gone through trainings and developed my own sort of technology and modality, it's led me to where I am now. So been a powerful, powerful experience.
Wow, that definitely sounds like it for sure. And when you think about anytime anybody is in a stressful situation or they're in a panic or whatever kind of chaos may be going on, that's the first thing people always say is control your breath, slow down your breath. You think about when women are giving birth to a baby, it's all about the breathing. I mean, you're literally bringing life into this universe, and it's all about the pattern of your breathing. So
Yep.
that is what a miraculous story. So we're glad that you made it through that and we're able to, like, figuratively and actually literally see the light and be able to share this with everybody today. That is incredibly awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I experienced my first like breath work session about a year and a half ago. Well, I guess it's probably 2 years now. And I had I had never experienced anything like that, and it's such a unique experience that people that are wanting to tap back into that part of themselves and to be able to heal different parts of their spiritual, physical, all of the above, right? That people often think about and talk about plant medicine, which is also a great modality and a great tool to use, but everybody's not on that path. Everybody's not necessarily ready for that, and that's okay. And I found that breath work is such a unique tool to be able to use and kind of get to a similar space that one might get to when using plant medicine to be able to break into those core issues that are deep in our subconscious that maybe we haven't even experienced or didn't even know was there. So would you want to just talk a little bit about that, about how breath work can bring those different pieces out, like what's actually happening that gets you to that similar type space to be able to learn and heal?
Yeah, there's a very deep metaphysical element of conscious breathing and breath work. Now, this can be broken down many ways, but essentially, you know, we're accessing the medicine that is already within us. Like we've heard that perhaps before, maybe someone listening to that, like you can access the medicine that's already within you. So what's happening in a plant medicine experience, whether we're talking about mushrooms, we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about ayahuasca, more maybe the more psychotropic, medicines of mushrooms and ayahuasca and so forth. What's happening there is the secretion, and you're essentially working with the plant's elements and what is created in the sense of DMT, right? DMT is a molecule that exists within the plant life as well as within us. And where is the most DMT stored? It's in our lungs. Now, the way in which DMT is produced is a precursor to melatonin, right? And there's a huge scientific explanation on that, which I'm not going to go super deep into. I already went into my book, and that's a whole conversation in itself. But essentially, what's happening is when we ingest these plant spirits, I like to say, is that we are then inducing this state in which DMT is, being excreted at high levels. And we are then being able to view this alternate reality, right? And this is the same thing that is produced when we die and when we leave this body. And so we're accessing this altered world, this altered dimension in many ways when we're working with these plant spirits. And now they have their own consciousness as well. So they're guiding us, they're showing us these different realms and providing us information and wisdom based on perhaps our intention. And so I'm all for medicine. But again, those experiences are often, if you're not anchored, you're not grounded, they can be quite intense, right? I've gone through many of them before. And so through the breath, and of course, when we look at different types of breathing and breath patterns, the more, I guess, faster hyperventilating type of breath patterns that you might see in holotropic breathing or shamanic breathing in and out of the mouth, that will again do the same thing where this DMT is already existing within you, most of the storehouse being in your lungs, which then travels up and your third eye, your inner sight begins to open and you begin to have these psychoactive, psychedelic type of experiences. So you're essentially you can access all of what you can access through that state and using plant medicine, using your breath as well. So again, I always recommend, and what I tell people is that if you want to go into those realms, especially working with like holotropic breathing, it's best to be done with a trusted guide and practitioner, just as you would take plant medicine, because there is a lot of different energies to work with in which a lot of trauma can also begin to arise and come to the surface. And you want to be able to have an equipped space holder to hold you there. Now, there is something to still be said, but even about slower breathing over a long period of time can still produce visions and these different effects. It just might not be as intense on the onset. So, like what I facilitate and what I share in sonic breathwork, it's combining um, cutting edge musical soundscapes with bioacoustics and different frequencies, along with these different breath patterns, and even like a 4-4 breath in through the nose, out through the mouth over an extended period of time can still produce what I'm sharing here. But again, it might just not be as intense as you would if you were practicing like holotropic.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's an opportunity with, guidance and integration and all the right tools and resources to use breath work in a similar fashion as someone might use plant medicine to do that deep inner healing. So then on the other side, how do you suggest people use breath work just on the regular, just on the casual, every day?
Yep.
I want to live a better life. Today, I'm not necessarily looking to, find out why, whatever, I have this mother wound, whatever, something deep, but something that can actually help you just on living your daily life better.
Well, so what I've designed, and this is based on a lot of intention and a lot of my personal experience, is a way for a beginner, intermediate, and advanced person to approach this practice where it's a daily ritual. It's something that you do every day, and over time, you begin to reap the rewards and benefits. Now, even just one session of our sonic breathwork, if you do like a 45-minute session, you will have profound insights and clarity that will come through. But even just 5, 10, 15 minutes a day of intentional conscious breathing will have a massive impact, and it will begin to change your life and transform you from the inside out over time. And so I approach it like that because, first of all, the world we live in, most people are not equipped and prepared to go deep super fast. They need an anchor. They need to be able to slowly begin to replenish themselves, because what happens when we're locked in trauma patterns, right? Which almost every single person is, whether we're talking about severe, chronic, or just acute trauma, doesn't matter. Everybody has some level of wounding and trauma. What happens when we have a traumatic experience? We go into either a fight, flight, or freeze response. These are or fawn, we can talk about as well, but these are the most common. And when we go into these responses, because we have to survive essentially, we hold on to these imprints, which then become emotional storehouses within our bodies. And whether that be in the manifestation of fear, on a surface level, it's generally showing up as anxiety, right? Beneath anxiety is fear. Beneath that might be a core wound, right? Of rejection, abandonment, betrayal, so forth. Might be grief, anger, whatever it might be. We store that within our body. What happens to our breathing pattern when we're locked into these trauma responses is that it begins to become shallow, or alternatively, we hold our breath and we're in this frozen state. Most people that I look at, and then I can tell within a matter of even just a minute, just watching them breathe, what's happening internally within themselves. If you look at a baby, if you look at a newborn, what is their breathing like? It's deep, it's rhythmic, they're breathing from the belly. But over time, due to conditioning, wounding, trauma, and so forth, their breathing becomes shallower and shallower, and they then begin breathing from the chest or the upper chest. This is just continuously exacerbating the stress and anxiety we already feel, because the shallower you breathe, the more you're just creating an environment of overwhelm. So when you begin to intentionally every day, even just 3, 5, 10 conscious breaths a day, you're repatterning yourself. When you're breathing into the belly, diaphragmatic breathing, you're essentially feeding yourself the life force energy that hasn't been in those areas where you're holding tension. And where do most people hold tension? The belly, the navel, the solar plexus, the heart. And these are all very common places where we hold a lot of tension in our bodies. And when we begin to bring life back into these areas, we begin to remove the blockages and barriers that we've been holding on to, and allow ourselves to essentially become liberated and free. Now, again, doing this over time, every day, and committing to just even a short practice, your life, even just in 30 days, will begin to transform itself in the most profound ways. So, that's the approach I like to take. Now, it depends on if I'm talking to someone else and I'm taking on a one-on-one session, in a coaching session, I might take someone super deep. But for the most part, we want to make this accessible, easy, and fun as well.
Yeah, I love that because it is one of those things that, people have been talking about meditation. At least it's seemingly more mainstream than even this breath work, right? And still, some people aren't doing it, but I think still people realize and acknowledge how important meditation can be to get back into that quiet space, to be able to have just 5 minutes, like you said, maybe it's 10, 12 minutes, just to have your own space, your own time for yourself, and being able to incorporate the breathing within that. It's like it's not only helping you maybe on the mental emotional side where the meditation is, but it's also physically helping you with the breathing as well. It's like all of the pieces in one. So why not combine it all together? It just seems like a better use of your time, you know?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So I had my first like journey psychedelic experience was with 5-MeO.
Uh-huh.
And whenever I went through that journey, I jumped all the way in, you know? Whenever I did that, I felt like I died. I felt like I was gasping for air to try to breathe. And of course, in that moment with my shaman and the other person that was in the room, my husband, it was like I wasn't moving. My eyes were open and my mouth was closed. But in my feeling of myself, I was gasping for air, so much so that like I died. I had that ego death inside. And I realized after that how locked I had been. And honestly, if I'm completely transparent, I'm still working on, right, getting better at. That's why I like to use the Beats and Breath app, and working on that, because I had no idea how much the breath was impacting me. Um, so much so that, even going like snorkeling has been a difficult challenge for me, because it's like, okay, you only breathe out of my nose, I only breathe out of my mouth. And it's like this controlled thing, which is a very good practice in controlling your breath in an experiment like that. And I even realized it with eating. Like I'm chewing too fast. I'm swallowing the food too fast before it's really digested, because it's like I have to make a conscious decision of just breathe through your nose, continue chewing, don't breathe in your mouth while you're chewing, still spend that entire time chewing as long as you need to still breathe, but without inhaling into your mouth to choke, because our body has these normal functions to breathe, swallow. And it's been a really big point in my life that I had no idea so much was trapped within my breath. And that 5-MeO experience is like, that's it. So it was like after that, there were some different experiences where I would be in those activated or triggered moments when something would come up. And it was just this conscious effort of now is my time to go through, maybe it's that 4-4 breath. And it's just slowly recognizing how powerful I am. I am still here. I do have the power to still breathe. So, what can I do to slow myself down, get out of that fight or flight, and really breathe into the life that I'm living?
Mm, I love that. And it just reminds me, it's just one message I could distill. It's just coming back to basics. We want to do so much. We want to try this and do this and this tool and that practice and all these things. But what breath is, it's basic, it's simple, but it's profound. And, studying, different wisdom teachings, working with the gene keys, working with the Tao Te Ching, working with Kabbalah, all of it comes back to breath and how you're breathing. And it's all taking what we have created in our own minds, which is a very complex human experience, to a very simple way of living. And when you're connected to your breath, you are living the essence of simplicity. And simplicity is where all true wisdom resides. It doesn't reside in the mind and complexity. It remains and it is in the house of simplicity, which is within our breath, which is within our heart.
I love that. It's in the simplicity. That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned gene keys. I don't know anything about that. Tell me more about gene keys.
Mm. Yeah, that's a whole episode in itself. The Gene Keys is a set of wisdom teachings I've been working with for nearly a decade as well. That's essentially bringing together your astrological makeup with the 64 archetypes of the Chinese I Ching, which is ancient wisdom teachings that are essentially sharing these archetypes that we all share. And the Gene Keys are these codes that are embedded within our DNA. And when we begin to look at it, we see that it's essentially a map of our soul. So, your soul pre incarnation, pre coming to this earthly school, this earthly plane, decided that you would house and have sort of an emphasis on these specific keys. And within each of these keys are a shadow frequency, which is our unconscious level of fear, victim patterns, and so forth, which is already within you, a gift frequency, which is essentially your core expression, and then a acidic frequency. So there's shadow, gift, and city. City is like the highest potential of that archetype, of that key. Now, the intention is to transform your shadows into your gifts. How do you do that? Well, there's many ways to do that. Breathing is at the foundation of that. And then, of course, we get into somatic inquiry and we look into our bodies, but also through the realm of contemplation, which is what the Gene Keys talks about. So you read through one of these keys, read through the shadow, go through the gift, go through the city, and you begin to see how all of your life, all of your relationships, all of your challenges has all played out perfectly to reveal your shadow so that you can elevate into your gifts. Because essentially, what is life? What is this human experience? It's essentially a realm for us to evolve, to grow, and to learn about ourselves. And a lot of times, so many of us, we fall into victim patterns and blame our parents or blame someone for the life that we're living. Well, you chose your parents based on your genetic code, essentially, that you have chosen pre incarnation, and they're just the mirrors reflecting that back to you. And so that you can grow and evolve. So no one is truly a victim of anything. You are a creator of your experience. And when you begin to work with the keys and take responsibility for your life, you begin to transform on so many levels. And so the gene keys is, it very much related to human design in the sense that they're based on the same foundational set of principles of astrology and the Chinese I Ching. But human design is more, it's based through a body graph. It's more masculine, more geared towards the mind. Gene Keys is more feminine. It's more heart-based wisdom teachings. I just gravitated towards that and have been, teaching this, working within their system for many years.
You find out what your gene key is. Is it
Yes.
related to your date, the time of birth, like the human design?
Yeah, so it's all related to your time, place, date of birth. You can go to genekeys.com and get your free profile. And then there's this, for anybody watching on video, there is the Gene Keys book right here, which is quite thick. It has all 64 Gene Keys in here. You can read through it. There's also audio contemplations. But if you're looking for a deep path of self-discovery and personal transformation, this paired with your breath, there's no better way because your breath essentially, and what I used to do is I used to run um, programs in which people would go through it and we'd go through contemplations together and then we would use our breath to activate these latent codes within our DNA because the breath is an activator. It turns and switches things on. So the breath is very much correlated with these teachings.
Wow, that's so incredible. So, will the gene keys then help you determine what your gifts are, and also, what other like heart components, I guess, are involved with that? What else can this help you with in your life?
Yeah, so essentially there's three sequences or three journeys that you would go through, using the gene keys. There's the activation sequence, which is all about discovering your higher purpose and creative genius. There's the Venus sequence, which is all about opening your heart in relationship and healing your core wounds. And then there's the Pearl sequence, which is all about liberating prosperity, from not only just a financial perspective, from, health, relationships, collaborations, and so forth. And so, it essentially it encompasses all aspects of our life. And when we look at the keys, we're looking at, and always foundationally when I teach anything or share anything is that the our reality, our life as we know it, is essentially a projection of our own consciousness. And so when we can really take that into account and look at that, everything is just one grand reflection. It's essentially we are projecting this onto the movie screen of our life. We are the actor, we are the producer, we are the writer, we are everything a part of the movie. And when we can begin to take ownership of what's happening inside out, and we begin to really work from that consciousness state and shifting our consciousness, we begin to change that movie or change our reality. And so the Gene Keys is a beautiful technology. The breath is a beautiful technology to do that and become empowered in your life.
Wow. What a beautiful tool. I can't wait to look into that and go to the site and find out what mine is. And what I guess what kind of recommendations would you give to somebody who's just kind of exploring, and maybe they're living their life and their um things just aren't things aren't the way they want them to be, whether that's in their relationship or their job or finances, just their physical health, anything. Like, where would you suggest somebody to get started?
Yeah, it's a great question. Multifaceted, multidimensional question, but at its simplest core, it's just like, okay, if you feel stuck, if you feel trapped, if you feel like you are just in this place of, feeling directionless or empty or lost, this is actually a really, might seem counterintuitive, but a really beautiful place to be because before expansion always comes contraction. And when we're in a state of contraction where we're confused, we're stuck, we're lost, and so forth, there's something brewing within us. So just for a moment, can we take our sight off of the external, off of the outside of what's not working? Take our sight off of that and redirect our sight inwards. What is it that life is telling us? What is it that our soul is guiding us towards? Asking ourselves these important questions begin to lead us within ourselves. And from there, whatever it is you desire externally, whether that is abundance, whether that is love, whether that is connection, whether that is purpose, whether that is meaning, there is an associated frequency or vibration with that thing that you desire. And so, first, we work on the inner planes to cultivate what it is that we desire externally. So, if I'm speaking to, let's just say, love, what does love feel like? What is the embodiment of love? When I feel love, where do I feel that in my body? Breathe that in. Allow that essence to permeate my being. And the more that I'm doing that, the more that I'm looking at my shadows, I'm looking at the parts of myself that I have abandoned, that I have rejected, that I have suppressed and repressed, and I start to breathe acceptance and love into those parts. Well, naturally, by law of the universe, that has to then be shown to me externally. And I just surrender. I trust the process. And in divine timing and divine rhythm, that I embody within shall be reflected without. And so start breathing into your internal experience. What parts of yourself do you need to forgive, to bring compassion and love to? And when you begin to do that, when you begin to get out of the mind and into the heart using the power of your breath, your life will begin to change in the most beautiful ways.
I love that. And that's like, it's something that someone can do with literally nothing. You don't need a single thing to get started. You don't have to ask for anything. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to be anything. You can literally take this moment that you're hearing me speaking these words and start.
Mm, that is very true. That is it. And the breath is, it's the greatest tool we have.
Yeah. And so easily overlooked for
Yep.
sure. And just sharing with the audience where, what information would you suggest them to go? Obviously, with your the app, you want to share more about the app and courses and the book and where they can find
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
those
yeah.
things if they want to learn more.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to get started, there's we have a free version of the app where you can basically get access to a 7-day challenge. There's video tutorials, all of that. We do have a subscription and premium for those that want to go deeper. We have close to 100 breathwork journeys. The app is called Beats and Breath. Beats and breath. And really it's a way for you to just tap in every day, whether it's for 5 minutes, 10, 15, 20, whatever you want to do. We have different intentions, different ways of working with your breath, different breath patterns. And the cool thing is that in my book, Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life, inside of this book, I have all the breath practices correlated with what I'm sharing in the book. So whether that's about healing your past and healing trauma, there's breath practices on the app that you can download then and go and access. Whether it's discovering your purpose, expanding your consciousness, manifesting your dreams, all of that information's in the book, and then it's correlated with the app. So they're both very much intimately interconnected and tied together. So you can buy the book on Amazon, Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life, download the app on iOS and Android. And yeah, I mean, on my personal site, christopheraugust.co, I have courses. I'm about to launch a membership on self mastery. So there's a lot of ways to access the work I do, but at its core, since today was about breath, those two resources, the book and the app, will very much support you on your journey.
I love that so much. And I have the free version, and today is my reminder that I need to hit the subscribe on that app because it has been fantastic. My husband and I did a 7-day challenge, and we just did it every single day, in the morning or at night, whatever it was. And it was incredibly powerful. And I really appreciate that you have something like that that's available for people out there to even do it on a free basis and get a feel of what the app is like and experience it. And I will highly recommend that to everyone out there. And the book is on order. So, like I said, I have been recognizing that I have some issues with my breath, and I know that I have an opportunity to heal those things and continue to improve and expand myself internally and externally, just all with the breath.
I love that. Well, blessings to you on your journey, and I'm happy to be of support. And thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, what an incredibly powerful episode. Here are a few takeaways. Breath is life and a powerful tool. Our breath is essential for life, and when we bring conscious awareness to it, it can be a catalyst for healing, growth, and transformation on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. Breathwork is active meditation. Breathwork is a form of active meditation that involves bringing conscious awareness to your breath to transform and elevate your well being. Breathwork versus plant medicine. Breathwork can offer similar experiences to plant medicine by accessing and releasing DMT. Holy crap, we actually have this inside of us. Did not know that. But this is highly recommended to be in a community. And if you are interested in being part of a community, please comment below or send us a DM on social media. And I'll send you some links to some different beautiful communities that can support you through your deeper breathwork practice. However, you can also use breathwork as a daily practice because consistent daily breath work, even for short periods, 5, 10, 15 minutes, can lead to profound transformation and help release trauma patterns. A few actionable steps for you guys. Incorporate the daily breath work. Just start with 5 to 10 minutes of intentional, conscious breathing to experience its transformative effects. You can check out the app, Beats and Breath, and where Chris has his sonic breath work. It's cutting edge musical soundscapes with bioacoustics and different frequencies that just sounds fucking cool. Definitely check it out. It is amazing. My husband and I use it all the time. I highly recommend it. And definitely share this episode with a friend if this resonated with you and maybe you've got some of your breath trapped. Let's get back to the basics and look at how you actually breathe. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Back to the Heart. If you are ready to awaken to a life filled with joy and purpose, subscribe now to Back to the Heart on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And remember, we are all one. So let's do this together and rediscover the essence of what inspires us all. Back to the Heart.